Well, hi guys, hopefully this finds very well. My name's Paul, this is Plan Zed, and in today's little session we're going to be diving back into the bass briefly. Now, what I've needed to do is I'm a live looper, so I'm a jack of all trades, bit of drums, bit of bass, bit of guitars, bit of vocals, but a songwriter really. So, you know, bass isn't my primary instrument, but I need to get my bass under control, the tone, and get myself a template up and running that is easy for me to kind of create other tones from. So to be clear, we're going to look at 3 different patches today, but in they've all been built from this patch, and then from this template I will go on to build all of my bass tones. So we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about stacking compressors, separating signal chains, and using all 4 blocks in mono whilst retaining stereo wetness. So let's start at the beginning of the chain. I'm going to talk to you about the overview. We're going to come back once we've looked at the whole chain and then get into the devil in the detail. So we come in, we hit noise suppression where I've got the released low and the threshold at about 70, 60, something like that. It goes up when I stick on a boost. I've got a boost here. I just put it up to 100 there to keep it nice and tight. Now here I'm splitting my signal, and I'm going to start off in this view. I'm working between manual mode and patch mode. So this button here is dealing with that change, and when we make that change we've got access to the bottom row of buttons. Okay, so you can see what's going on. When I press this button I get just the low end. You'll need to be in headphones to hear that, or on a fairly decent system. Now all we're hearing in this channel is the frequencies below 160 Hertz. I could make the cut here, but I want to run these channels independently of each other at times, and when I'm building tones. So here we're going to start off with the low end. Actually, no, I started to talk about the whole chain. So we've got the low end there, but when I press the button back, we're combined with our amp channel. Now in our amp channel, this is the A side here, I've got, you know, a couple of effects in here. We've got a send return here where I'm using 2 notes cab M for my cabinet, but I'm going to talk to you about what you do if you're using GT1000 cabinets. I'm going to set this same patch up in my other GT1000 so we can hear it just raw with only GT1000 things. But I play guitar and I run my guitar through a 2 notes, and so I'm going to use it on the bass here. Also use ToneX, but I want to keep ToneX out of the bass for the minute until I finished experimenting. Now, getting back to track, here in this channel we've got options. We've got a low gain amp, a medium gain amp, and then, so you'll hear very little difference, medium gain, and then this is the high gain. Now the amps themselves, we'll get into the detail of that in a moment and how we can kind of play around with them, but I want to draw your attention to what's going on here. So we're back on the low gain. I can switch the channel now. This is just the DI channel, where all it is a distortion block with the bass DI on. And to start with, I've got the drive on 0, 45 for the tone, and the level on 30. Okay, but we're going to come back to this in a minute, get into the detail of that. Now we're back on the amp with our low gain here. Now here I've got EQs, we'll talk about that. For the low end I've got a limiter here, and then that's going, both of these are then going into this compressor here. We'll get into that in a moment. And then there's the cabinet output. Now here, if you were using GT1000 cabinets, you can just click on this, hold down, and move that cabinet to after the amp here, okay, if you're using GT1000 cabs. But I'm not, I'm just splitting the output here. Now the actual output is this block here. That's your cabinet, but obviously I've got that turned off at the moment. Now I've got my output set to line phones, and in here I've got the microphone all turned off, and I've got the direct level up. Now let's just talk about going stereo using mono. So in the master block here, if we scroll along 1 page, 2 pages, so page 3, we've got this extra FX4. I've got that on, which means we're working in mono. Okay, now the reason I've got things set up here is I'm using my GT1000 a bit like a studio in a way, if I was using a DAW. So I split my signals up, we're going to talk about that, and then I'm coming into my output here, where I've got a side chain, where I've got a reverb. So I've got an external foot switch, an FS7, that will engage that here, and you'll hear I've got stereo wets. Stick a stereo chorus on that. We could have a bit more of that chorus, so just bring that up a part. But what we'll do is we'll just back you off a touch. Yeah, that's quite nice. But actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that back as it was, because at the moment all the patches are set up the same, so we can hear what the differences are. So by setting up like this, I can get stereo wets on my mono bass signal. And what I've done is, let's just start talking about compressors now. So I haven't got a compressor at the front of the chain at the moment. I could put one there if I want. And there's no compressor through here until I get to there. Now on the low frequencies, I've got a compressor, bass compressor, but it's limiting. This bass compressor, which is the X bass, is giving me some softer compression than limiting. We'll get into this in a minute. But then at the end of the chain here, I've got a stereo compressor, so I can have my wets in stereo and use just a regular stereo compression. So, and it's just helping keep the levels again. So if I turn that off, let's take the chorus off, put the compressor on. It's not really changing my tone, but it's just managing things ever so slightly. Those peaks, it's holding them together. It's got a medium gain, just felt that go up a little bit in energy. This is my high gain. Let's come back to the medium gain. Okay, so the stereo compressor there will help everything bind together when I stick on my wet effects here. That means now I can have stereo delays, stereo choruses, whatever stereo effect I want after my bass, I can apply it and still manage it through nicely for my mix. Now, none of this will work if when I play my drums, the kick drum isn't working and all of this. So these templates, let's start talking about how I'll use it to dial the tone in. So I'm going to come into the low end first. Sorry, I'm flitting around there. Let's press this, get on to just the low end. So rather than splitting the signals in the divide itself with the frequency here, I want to be able to play this on its own and be able to dial it in as like a sub bass tone. So I'll need to change how it's set up at the moment when I do that, but I'll talk you through how we're set up to start with and then what I would do to modify. So we've got a low cut here at 63 Hertz because I want to be out of the way of the bass drum energy. The bass drum fundamental is going to be somewhere between 40 and 50, 60. The bass low E fundamental goes down to 60, I believe. So really, if I wanted more of a sub bass tone, I might want to bring this down to 40, and then in here I've got to push at 100 Hertz. I might want to bring that down to 80 or 50 if I want a much deeper bass tone here with this. But for the purpose of just my straight up bass template, we're doing it like this. Out of the way of my kick drums, because I know I've got a sub in there. So I've got a 63 on the low cut, and the high cut is at 160 because we're only dealing with the frequencies between 160 Hertz and 0. Okay, so there we've cut out everything to 63. We've got a slope off. Now here I'm doing a cut at 160 Hertz on a Q of 2 minus 4. I want to take out some mud and energy in that area that's going to get in the way of my drums. Now here, I'm pushing 100 Hertz on a Q of 1 plus 3. But if I wanted more, I can push this harder into this limiter and make this limiter work harder for me. So let's just, before we do that, let's just go through the front page, which is just 0, 0, 0. There's no adjustment there, okay? I'm using the compressor to get my level. So let's... I can get quite aggressive with that. just put it down slightly to 80. Going to be very subtle differences here. So I can give that more of a kick, but I'd want to do that in a mix, not just here in the room, because you're always going to want to go over the top on your own. We'll put it in with a beat. There, let's just have that so it's being nicely managed. Now it's going into, as I say, a limiter, so it's set to compression, X bass comp. I've got the threshold on 0, so we're squashing the hell out of it. It's like a sausage. And I've got the attack up on 100%, so we've got all the attack up, fastest attacks, and we're squashing the signal with the threshold. The level there, I think that's 48. Yeah, it is. Now here, if I want more level on this, I can bring it up, obviously. Now that I've got the tone on 0, we're set to infinite 1, which is limiting, and I've got none of the direct mix coming through. This is quite important, okay? So that is then going into this compressor here, where I've just pulled the attack back a little bit, and I've got the threshold. We're just giving ourselves a bit of gain reduction here. You can see here the 3 dots that are kind of going up there. Let's come down to our limiter here. You can see it's compressing much harder there, okay? So here, we've got a slightly softer style of compression where I'm going 4:1 on the ratio. I've got some of the direct mix coming through at 30. The tone is on 0. The threshold on 40. So we're getting some compression. And the attack at 80. So not so aggressive on the attack. Let's bring in, just remind ourselves, the third compressor in the chain for the low end is this soft compression right at the end. It's a stereo compressor though. Sustain at 50, the attack at 40, so very gentle. 39 on the level, 0 on the tone, 1.6:1 the ratio, and 30% of the dry mix coming through. Okay, so that's giving me my nice solid bass. And if I move around the neck, nothing's popping out. I can move around the neck and it's going to be nice and solid, that low end. So now let's bring in our... Okay, so what we'll do is we'll come down to the beginning of the divide here to talk about this channel. Let's hear it on its own. Okay, so there's no low frequencies in here. We're coming in, we hit a divide. We've got the 2 amps. I've got noise suppression there because I'm using 2 notes cab amp. I've got my DI channel here. Now the EQ here, the strategy is slightly different. So let's go to the low cut. The low cut is at 160 because it's dealing with the frequencies that we take off from here. And there's no high cut here just yet. 315 hertz. I'm pulling out on a Q2 and pulling out 3 dB just to take up a bit of mud. And I'm doing the same at 160 hertz. I want to leave this space here so the bass is focused around 80 to 100 hertz and then dips out of the way for a bit of drum energy. Okay, and below that we've also got the kick drum. So hopefully that's making sense to you as I explain it. So I'm taking out -4 Q2, same as in the other channel. Here we're 0, 0, +6 on the level to gain stage it, okay? Then the EQ block after that is 0, +6, 0. Here we're dealing with highs and the low mids. So I've taken out a load of boomy energy in the 300 and the 160. But here I can put some meat back in. And this is quite important. If people are listening to the mix through a phone, we want to be pushing somewhere over the 300 hertz so the bass is in that region. I'm going for 400 on a Q of 1 plus 3 dB, I think I've gone. Yeah, plus 3 dB on that. Now the next thing I'm doing is I'm giving the fingers, so we've got some attack. So at 1.6K, again, I've got the Q at 1, and I'm just pushing 3 dB of 1.6K. Then I've got my high cut at 4K. Okay, so I've gone up the frequencies with the low cut at one end and the high cut at the other end. Hopefully you followed that. So now we've covered the 3 compressors, the 3 EQ blocks, the amps. We're going to get into those in just a little moment. let's talk about this DI channel and how I plan to use it. So, as I say, let's get our, let's bring the low end back in for this bit. So let's, okay. Now here, I can switch to just the DI, okay. And what's nice about this is if I just bring up the gain here, I've got loads of control. I've got spare EQ in here, but we've also got the tone knob. I've got none of the dry mix coming through, but I have taken out just a little bit of bass at -5. Just push that a bit harder, 47. Max it at 50. So let's just pull this right back. So this won't feel as intense now, will it? Now we've gone all the way to the edge. So now let's go back to our bass amp. Now we can obviously blend these, so blending the two so I get a bit of bite there. Now that's really going to help me in a mix. So what we're going to do is, I can't remember if I made any changes there. A good habit, what I like to do is just save my patch. So I'm just going to save my patch. We've talked about how we can get stereo out of a mono patch. I've got all 4 effects blocks in there for me to use now. 3 of them are tied up as compressors, or 2 of them are, because we've got a compressor block as well. But what I then did, I can't remember if I changed anything there, so I said to myself not to, didn't I? So I then just copied it. So we got an SVT. Now the SVT is quite dynamic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it, pick it gently, and then dig in. You won't get that with the natural amp. It stays quite clean when the harder you hit it, but this one is quite dynamic. Just playing the notes quite softly. So get a bit of distortion and bite come through. And that low B is quite powerful. So yeah, the SVT is in here as well in the same patch, and then we've got an X drive. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to pedal an E for a moment. I'm going to bring in a beat, and I just want to see how the 3 different ones sit without any DI and then with a bit of DI, and we'll see how we get on. I don't want to be too long here. I just want to see how things sit with my beat. So let's, there's the beat. I think the levels are good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just pop on the DI channel for each. Now, I've not adjusted anything, so they've all got the same DI with the same DI setting. I might want to change it. I might want to look at the EQs because the amps will be different. And we're going to just talk about the amp settings before we do the next bit. Now, here I found with the X drive, I needed to bring the levels down a little bit. So what I've done is I've set up the medium gain so that the medium and the low gain, I've got the gain at 35, sag and resonance on 0, bass on 45, mids on 55, trebs on 55, and we've got the presence on 90. Okay, now this is, I've not adjusted that. That's the settings I've put on in the template. Okay, so if I want to shape the tone, I've got the tone stack of the amp. Okay, now the low gain is set the same way as the medium gain, but when I flick the switch here from medium to high gain, I'm going to need to look at the noise suppression in here. You can hear a bit of noise now. I've got the gain going up to 70. Nothing else changes, but the level changes here. So what I want to just draw our attention to here is I've got the level for the medium gain at 45, low gain at 65, and when we go to the high gain here, it goes from 43 to 45. So 43 is in the high gain, medium gain 45. Okay, so if I just, did I just save that? I'm just going to save it so we know we've got the DI on. Okay, so that level there, very different to the natural, where I'm up at 90 on the low gain, 55 rather than 45 for the medium, and the high gain drops all the way down to 20. Okay, it has less effect as well. If we come now to the SVT, 85, so it's about 5 less, 55 here on the level, going to 45, so the difference, so let's go, could even look at how that's dialed in. Might just be it. Now I'm going to want to look at that. Remembering we've got the DI track on at the same time as well, so it's got a little extra bite there. So the levels were quite different between the amps, but I haven't changed anything else. The tone stacks are all the same, okay? So what we're going to do now is, let's start off, go low, medium. So I'm going to do a beat, we'll go low gain, medium gain, high gain for each of the amps. Very little difference. Rounder. Size. I'm just going to pull that back by 1. Pulled it back by 2. So it ended up 55 for the medium gain and 43 for the high gain. I'm going to save that on the medium gain. A bit more on that. Okay, so I think the levels there are quite good. What I'm going to do now is attempt to play a bass line, and I want to use 2 different tones. We're going to start out with the DI, and then we're going to go to another bass line. I'm going to switch like that, so we've just got it's a high gain, but it's more of just a rounded woolly tone, I think. See how it brightens it up, just introducing the DI there. So What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and keep this video short. We've already gone over the 20 odd minutes mark. I wanted to be under 20 minutes. So, but yeah, so that's how I'm going to go about separating my bass from my drums in the EQ and the frequencies, and compression is key to getting that low end under good management. Hopefully you found that interesting and insightful. I'll catch you later. Bye.